that the opening address to the court made by the prosecution was that here we have two defendants who are well respected in that field, and their credentials are beyond question.
After a trial lasting 2 days and costing the taxpayer an estimated £20,000, Carl and Paul were acquitted on all 9 charges. But the RSPB still defends the decision to prosecute.
If people are breaking the law and it's serious, in other words, causing disturbance or apparently causing disturbance to rare breeding birds in Britain, which could start to affect populations of those birds locally rather than nationally, isn't the RSPB acting rather in a rather sort of woolly way if it says, oh no, we don't want to prosecute them because they've given us a bit of help in the past, we don't want to see them prosecuted?
Now, this was a prosecution by the Crown Prosecution Service, but how important was the role of the RSPB, do you think, in this?
Well, fundamental. The RSPB were there throughout the initial stages. They were there at the time of the defendant's arrest. Subsequently, they were present during the search, and I think that they were a fundamental influence upon the prosecution.
I think they're using the Crown Prosecution Services to save themselves money, if you like, because in the past they would have brought the prosecution themselves and lost. It would have cost them a lot of money. Now this has cost the taxpayer a lot of money and the RSPB hasn't had to pay a penny out.
In support of the decision to bring the case, the RSPB quotes this, evidence that Carl and Paul were fined 6 years ago in Iceland.
Mr. Stott and Mr. Smith, we have this on authority from the Icelandic government, were stopped at taking photographs at the nest of a very rare bird, the gyre falcon, a big falcon much larger than a peregrine, and they appeared, as we understand it, before a court, were fined and dismissed.
Yes, we was fined. If you can call £10 a fine, when the price of a Mars bar in Iceland was 55p at the time. There was a language difficulty, as you can understand. None of us could speak Icelandic and they couldn't speak English.
It was impossible to get near the gyre falcon site because of the tremendous gorge what the bird was nesting in. You could only view it from across the other side of the gorge. So the nearest you could possibly get to it was about 300 or 400 yards.
We thought, well, we're not going to ruin our holiday for the sake of a small fine. So, and we couldn't understand. We could have fought it, but would have ruined our holiday. This was the first few days of our holiday, and we had another 2.5 weeks to go. So we agreed to pay the fine.
But Lake District MP Dale Campbell-Savers thinks the RSPB has been unfair to Paul and Carl.
The Northwest Protection Group is manned by people who are devoted to the work they do. Many of them have experience going back 20, 25 years, far longer, may I say, than many officers in the RSPB. And it's a question of getting them to understand that they should be working with them and not against them.
We can't afford to be working with people if we are even slightly suspicious, or if other people are suspicious of what their activities are all about. It's not a downer on them at all. We need to work closely. We haven't got the time not to work closely with other organisations.
This is a secretly made tape recording of another encounter between an RSPB warden and the Northwest Protection Group in the same valley last summer. It was made by Robin Page, who writes on conservation issues for national newspapers and magazines, and who's the author of 18 books. On the evening in question, he was on a field trip with the group.
The RSPB warden actually accused them of disturbing a rare bird, which I thought was nonsense because the birds were in the air, that they weren't in the eyrie. And I've been involved with conservation for years and years and years, and it's my view that they did no damage whatsoever. And the RSPB man, he did say that as far as he was concerned, that Smith and Stott, who had been prosecuted earlier and had been discharged by the magistrate, he said that in his opinion they were still guilty, and in the opinion of the RSPB they were still guilty.
If they said that, and of course I wasn't present, that is totally inappropriate. Once the court has made its decision, the RSPB abides by that, and you won't find us, at least I hope you won't find us, going around belly aching about the decision that's made.
Carl and Paul still believe the case was brought because of a desire by the RSPB to squeeze them out of bird protection.
We fought it, and as you know, we won. But if we'd have lost forever more, the RSPB would have said, oh, he's been in trouble before. They would have used that against me, and everybody would have believed that I had done wrong.
When these cases go to court and people are proved guilty, they gain a lot of publicity out of them, don't they? It's on the television. I mean, my case, it was on Granada, it was on BBC. It's all publicity. But as soon as the case was over, they were nowhere to be seen. They all disappeared rapid. All the RSPB, they never said, shut your hands and said that was the end of it. They just disappeared in the night as though it was never there. But if it had been the other way, would have been found guilty, they'd have all been stood there with their chests out, wouldn't they?
All of the people we've interviewed in this programme recognise that the RSPB's efforts to protect nesting birds have prevented many chicks and eggs being stolen from the wild. But they and others are uneasy about the law concerning disturbance of wild birds. They argue that it can lead to people having their homes searched, being charged and standing in the dock, even when they mean no harm and may well have caused no harm to the birds. These pictures were taken by Neil Walker, a joiner from Aberdeen. He's been photographing birds of prey for 12 years, but 2 years ago his hobby landed him in court. The police, along with the RSPB, raided the Walkers' home at 7:30 one Sunday morning, when Neil had just returned from an overnight job.
I had just arrived back in my bed approximately an hour before, as I'd been on duty all night, and at the front door was 2 RSPB officers and 2 policemen. So they said they had a search warrant, and they asked if they could come in.
We've got 2 daughters, and they were in the house at the time as well. We were all taken out of our bed in our night clothes. And when you've got 4 strange men that comes into your house, and you're standing in your night clothes, it's not very nice. I think that was 2 hours, 2.5 hours they were in the house for. And as I say, they were in every room of the house, you know, in drawers and all this kind of stuff. And you don't like people, strange people, going through your clothes, your drawers, your cupboards, anything else like that.
When the case came to court, Neil Walker was cleared of intentionally disturbing wild birds.
I feel they went right over the top, and they probably would have been better channeling their time and their money towards probably egg collectors or people who are stealing young chicks.
Have you ever taken any eggs or taken any birds?
No, I feel egg collecting to be a sick blasting, and the RSPB are quite right to pursue any egg collecting cases in a vigorous manner.
The RSPB argues that Neil Walker's acquittal shows the law needs tightening. At present, you can only be convicted for intentionally disturbing wild birds. Though some think this is a necessary protection for the innocent, the Society believes it doesn't give birds enough protection, and that the wording of the Act should be changed. Derek Ratcliffe, one of Britain's foremost conservationists, takes the opposite view. He believes the existing law may be too strict, and that it can be misused, as he put it, out of spite, officiousness, or to settle scores.
The proposal to introduce this clause about willful disturbance to stop people visiting the nests of selected rare birds, those on Schedule 1, and the possible abuses that friends of mine expressed to me their worries about.